When we think of Earth's history, we typically begin with the emergence of life some 3.5 billion years ago. But the story of our planet actually started billions of years before that. Long before the first single-celled organisms arose, Earth had already gone through some major changes. What was life like on prehistoric Earth? What secrets did our planet hold in its earliest days? And what can studying these ancient times tell us about the world we live in today? This is before time began, and these are the amazing secrets of prehistoric Earth. For most of human history, the idea of Earth's history began with a sort of divine creation event. Religious texts often serve as the foundation for people's understanding of the world, at least in terms of how it came to be. It wasn't until relatively recently that science offered an alternative explanation, one that didn't involve a deity, but rather a slowly cooling sphere of rock and dust. According to this scientific theory, Earth formed around 4.6 billion years ago when a small rocky body roughly the size of Mars mashed into the young planet. In the aftermath of the collision, much of Earth's crust was vaporized, forming a layer of hot magma. Over time, this cooled to form a solid crust, while the planet's core began to take shape too. Eventually, the chaotic early years of Earth's existence calmed down and the planet began to look more like the one we know today. The surface was still very different, however, and the atmosphere was thick with carbon dioxide. There was also very little oxygen in the air, which meant that liquid water couldn't exist on the planet's surface. Instead, there were vast oceans of ice. Eventually, though, the sun began to shine more brightly as it entered what astronomers call the main sequence. For Earth, this meant that the heat from the sun began to melt the planet's icy surface. And as the ice melted, it formed oceans that stretched as far as the equator. By now, the stage was set for the next chapter in Earth's history. But life as we know it could not yet emerge. That's because although the oceans were full of dissolved gases, there was still no free oxygen for living things to breathe. Photosynthesis, which produces oxygen as a byproduct, had not yet evolved, and so life was limited to simple single-celled organisms called prokaryotes. These would have been similar to bacteria and archaea, the two groups of organisms that still make up the majority of Earth's living things in terms of numbers. Still, these early prokaryotes were quite diverse, and they inhabited every environment on the planet. Some were anaerobic, meaning that they lived without oxygen. Others were extremophiles, which means that they thrived in extreme conditions. Many lived near volcanic vents at the bottom of the ocean, where superheated water mixed with cold seawater to create the perfect chemical reactions for their survival. In fact, scientists believe that this was where the first life on Earth arose. As the eons passed, the prokaryotes diversified and spread across the globe. They reproduced by splitting into two identical daughter cells, a process known as binary fission. But eventually, some of these cells began to group together and perform specialized tasks. Scientists don't exactly know how this happened or why, but they do know that these early multicellular organisms were likely simple, soft-bodied creatures that resembled modern jellyfish or sponges. Over the next several 100 million years, more complex creatures followed. First came the arthropods, the largest group of which were the trilobites. With over 20,000 species identified by scientists, trilobites were incredibly successful. They were also incredibly diverse, ranging in size from a few millimeters to over 30 centimeters long. The trilobites were soon joined by other creatures such as mollusks, brachiopods, and early fish. All told, it was an incredible period of diversification, one that laid the foundation for the explosion of life that would occur just a few 100 million years later. Today, we are still discovering new details about prehistoric Earth. Scientists recently found evidence that the first animals may have appeared 635 million years ago, 100 million years earlier than previously thought. Other researchers have proposed that Earth's first supercontinent assembled as early as 1.8 billion years ago, long before the supercontinent Rodinia formed. Still, others have suggested that life may have begun in the vast underground aquifers that were present in Earth's early years. The study of prehistoric Earth may never end. New discoveries are made all the time, and our understanding of our planet continues to grow. What's more, scientists are making connections between Earth's history and the evolution of life that help them understand how ecosystems work, how species adapt to environmental change, and how the planet may have supported life throughout its entire history. Studying prehistoric Earth may seem like a purely academic exercise, but it has real-world applications that can help us address some of the biggest challenges facing humanity today.